Hey guys, this is Matt, Classic American Thunder. Hey, there was some confusion on the wheel bearings and setting the wheel bearings up with that tool I had. So I just thought, well, I'll go through it real quick and show you kind of how I do it and what the differences are. So here, stay with me and we'll work through it. Hold on. Okay, so in 1986, I think in there, to 99, they ran a Timken tapered wheel bearings. And this is what I was setting up in that other video. So you have two of these. These are your races. This is your bearing. Your races go up inside here. You know, the race is out like that. So when you tighten up your bearings in this wheel, you would have a bearing in there that goes against this race, your spacer, and then your other spacer, or I'm sorry, your not spacer, your race, your spacer, your other race is in the wheel, and then your bearing goes in, and you tighten up your axle onto these bearings. So when these bearings get tightened up, they tighten on this race here, and that's what we're measuring. As this is tightened up, how much do these bearings move in and out of this wheel on these races? And you want like 2 to 6 thousandths wheel bearing play. So I already went ahead and cleaned these just so you can kind of see what I was doing, how I was setting it up. You know, in this wheel here, if you want, we can, let's do this side here, make it easy. So basically I'm using this tool to check these wheel bearings. You know, the races are already installed. So I put a wheel bearing on, I put the spacer on, and then I put the tool through the wheel, like so. Put your other bearing in, and then basically we just use spacers to kind of take up the rest of that axle there. Yeah. Some rough spacers here. Let's just say here. It's kind of hard for me to do this on the workbench because this thing wants to move. Just a little test stand I made to show you guys this. Tighten that up. And then we're actually checking how much movement's in those bearings. And this is from 1999 wheels and older. 2000, which I'll show you here in a second. But so we're just checking. Let's set this here. So we're almost at, you know, right on 4 thousandths with this wheel. Checking this, the end play on these bearings. So, I mean, that's almost perfect. I'll take this back out. One of the things I wanted to show you too is you don't need these fancy tools. You know, I bought this thing from, luckily, you know, Johnny down at Needing Darts, Harley-Davidson before they closed up. And this is a really cool tool. This is what we use here in the shop. But we didn't always have this tool. What we would use, you know, let's set this down. And what you'll probably use, you got an old rotor, don't have to be the right one, just has to be flat. All right, so we just kind of snugged up because it'll be just fine. So if you take your axle that you have, say it's your rear axle, you can use it to check your wheel bearings. Put the spacer in, bearing, spacer, put it through, put your other bearing in, and then I just have some make-up spacers to take up space in the axle here that I'm trying to put in. Don't seem to go on very well. Torque these to 50 foot-pounds. It's kind of hard for me to do it here on the bench because with this test stand I built to just kind of show you. But you get the point. You gotta have it tight. So axle spins free, kind of a junk axle. The way we did it for years here, if we didn't have that tool, you can take this, put it onto your rotor magnetic base, and then basically put this onto your axle. Now you have a dial indicator, and you can indicate the free play on the end of the wheel. So I don't know if you can see it. So we're pretty close to 4 thousandths. If I can get a good read on it here. Yep, see how it just moved? Sometimes the bearings just sit and you can't move them back, but just the way it is. Yep, there's a little bit more. So that's what the idea is. We're just trying to get some free play in these wheel bearings. That's tightened up tight and the wheel's nice and free. You can feel just a little bit, which we know it's 4 thousandths end play. You can't get no better than that. So, see if I can get this thing off. So that's just one way to do it. Simple. If you can get a dial indicator, any kind of indicator in there to check the play. It's not rocket science. Make it simple. Put these back on. Get this out of our way. All right. So this is 99 and older, 1999 and older. In 2000 and newer, they went to a sealed ball bearing, which looks like that. There's no end play to set up. You put one in, you put your spacer against it, and then you pull your other one in to lightly sit on the spacer so that nothing can move. That's the end of that. So, I'm going to show you that real quick. Okay, so some of you guys have spacers in your wheels, which is very common. Almost everyone has it. So you would have a bearing, put this back, and then a spacer, which is supposed to look like this. It's a stepped spacer, and this step goes against the bearing so that you have your clearance for your cage here, so your cage can move back and forth. And this is I think 90 thousandths. So some of you guys have this in here, and then you might even have little shims like this. This little shim would go against the spacer on the back side of that step spacer to go like that. And that's if you needed more play, you would put more spacers in and move the bearings away from each other so that they could have more free play. I'll show you that in a second. So let's just measure and make sure here before we get too far. This is a 4 thousandths spacer. So we're at 195. Yeah, we're at 90 thousandths here. So let's just say we have 90 thousandths and that was a 4. And what do we have before? We had 4 thousandths. So we should have 98 thousandths clearance, which is way too much, but for a sense of, we're just going to do it and show you. So that goes in. Your thin spacer goes on the back side. Your step goes towards the bearing. Spacer. And we'll go put it in the wheel. See what it does. Alright, so we added 94 thousandths to our bearings, to our end play, and because we already had 4. So we should have 98 thousandths. I don't know if we can even measure that. It's so loose. Yeah, we can't even get a good reading on it. Well, pretty close there. We say it's there somewhere. Yeah, everything's just moving so much. Pretty close. 96 or so. Let's see, we got so much free play. So that's the whole point. We're trying to go from, this much play, which is way too much, down to 4 thousandths. And that's where we want to be, just a little bit of play. Oh, there we go. So, take this off, take our spacers out, step spacer, 4 thousandths shim. He said it's really hard for me to get that torque on it, but you see where we're after. And we're back to, about 4, 5, in that ballpark. That's what you want. That's exactly what you want. So if it's too tight, you gotta add some shims. If it's too loose, you gotta take some shims out. And you should, we do it in the shop here. You keep the bearings with the races, but this is just a test wheel, and I was just trying to show you, so it didn't much matter to me. This wheel's obviously weld it to a stand. Never going to use it again. Last but not least, I want to show you guys in the shop here like to use this fancy tool. This is how they pack wheel bearings. You can put it in there, squeeze it, pack the bearing. Simple enough. You don't need it. You can do it old school. It's the way we've been doing it for years. Take it, put some grease in your hand like that, right in your palm. Open cage, bottom of the bearing, and just work it like this. And turn it a little bit as you're doing it. You can see the grease packing up through the bearing. That's how my dad taught me to pack the bearings. Got grease packed up all the way up through it. Just as good as using a fancy packer. Takes a couple minutes, you're done. Put some grease in here, work it around the wheel bearings, make sure everything's greased up really well. After you set your end play, put the bearings in like that. Seals, 4751983 is the seal number. Pound your seals in where they go. I think that's it. I hope that kind of explains a little bit better to what I was trying to show you the other day.